Hello and welcome to the Wednesday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove. I'm joined by a man who's always here, Taylor Rockwell.
Hello.
And a man who's not normally here, it's Pav. Hello,
Hello.
Pav.
Hello.
So, Pav watched the Arsenal-Bayern game with us in studio, and he's such a smart guy who knows so much about soccer. We want to get him on the show. We also probably need to explain Pav's accent, because I feel like it's going to be weird to American ears.
Yeah, well, pretty much I'm from Huddersfield, Yorkshire. Most people haven't heard of it.
It's not the classic English accent that most American ears think.
It's not the usual, but hopefully people are going to know about Huddersfield next year once we go up to the Premier League because of an American manager.
Yeah,
was it David Wagner?
David Wagner is the Huddersfield. Where are Huddersfield on the table? In case people
Huddersfield are third in the table, 4 points away from Brighton, so we're chasing.
And how many points away from Wolves?
From Wolves, about 10, 15, I'd have to say.
A million.
It is weird to do a show with an Englishman and have friends who are English or speak with English accents, because even like today we went to Subway and everybody behind the counter would look at Daryl like with these very like, oh, he's different. Like, and I kind of forget that you all have different sounding voices right up until people are weirded out by them.
So hopefully now our audience will be calibrated, their ears will be calibrated to Pav's Yorkshire accent, so we can get into Arsenal's 5-1 away loss at Bayern Munich.
Let's do it.
Maybe we'll get into the details of the goals. We'll talk PSG Barcelona later. I know people are waiting to hear about that. That'll be part 2 of today's show. Let's start with maybe our overall theory of what on earth happened here. How did Arsenal get beat so badly? Mm-hmm. Taylor, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Normally we only have one person to throw to. Now
I'm waiting to be called upon. Yeah.
Let's start with Taylor. Why?
Well, I mean,
is what Arsenal fans
it's
will be
just
asking.
because Arsenal aren't good enough, right? And Arsene Wenger's got to go, and I think
Arsenal people can find Arsenal Fan TV on YouTube.
Okay, then that's fine. I mean, there's definitely an air of collapse about it. Certainly, I think the bigger point for me, because I mean, even in the first 5 minutes we talked about, it just seemed like this wasn't an Arsenal team that was up for it. They didn't seem to be as tactically prepared as did Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
And you could see that just in the way Bayern were switching positions and overloading sides. At one point, I think Robben and Douglas Costa were on the same side within 5 yards of each other, passing back and forth.
And that wasn't an accident.
And that was a right winger and a left winger.
Yeah,
so,
that was a plan.
Yeah, so it shows you that they were kind of targeting that left side of Arsenal, and you could see a specific game plan.
Is that the polite way of saying they were targeting Kieran Gibbs?
Yeah, Kieran Gibbs and Granit Xhaka, however you want to go with it, yeah. So, I mean, I think you could see that clear game plan from Bayern. Maybe the Arsenal game plan less clear.
Yeah, Pav, could you see what was Arsenal's game plan looking at this?
I don't want to be overcritical, but as I was saying while we were watching the game, it's same old Arsenal. This is what I mean. It's a big game. The 2-1 down, which is not something impossible to turn around, but you can't see anyone pressing.
Yeah.
You can see him just tactically being complete shambles defensively.
And we'll definitely, because you were the one that spotted it in the studio, we'll talk about the problem with pressing maybe when we get to that magnificent Thiago goal.
Yeah.
The first magnificent Thiago goal, because there were 2 of them.
I'm not sure the second one was magnificent.
Really?
It was good.
If you hit one that well, I'll be impressed.
You mean off of another player?
Yes.
Okay.
So the other thing is, I want to make the argument that Arsenal did kind of have a plan. It just wasn't particularly well executed. Mm-hmm. I would say that plan was, because they're away to Bayern, right? I would say the plan was to sit a little bit deep, like leave Alexis Sanchez alone as the lone striker. He's got pace. And you've got Iwobi on the left. You've got Oxlade-Chamberlain on the right. They will do the defensive work, right? They will work back, but then they've got pace on the counter. I think the plan was to counter. Mm-hmm. But to counter, you've got to get the ball back first, and maybe that was the part they didn't do so successfully.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a fair summary of what they were trying to do. My difference...
Trying is the word.
Well, yeah, but maybe this is also just sort of like the way I see the Champions League, is that it's this huge event, especially in the knockout rounds, and so managers tend to, I feel like, really put a lot of effort into it, a lot of thought into it. Mm-hmm. And you go back to like Pep Guardiola, last season, trying to do man marking at the entire field. You have,
so he overthought it.
Yeah, the famous Jose Mourinho team with Inter, where he had like this crazy defensive plan that worked.
He thought it just the right amount.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. And it seems like maybe in this situation, Wenger didn't think about it enough. And that's probably a gross oversimplification. I'm sure tons of planning went into it. But just sitting back and counter, it's not that sort of like specific game plan where we're going to target this one tiny little weakness that we can exploit to get the result. It felt sort of like, we'll sit back, we got some pace, Alexis Sanchez is pretty good, we'll get a result, and that is not what happened.
And as Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the mouth.
There it is.
Pretty early on, Arsenal got punched in the mouth by Arjen Robben's left foot. So can we start with that opening goal?
We can, but first, Pav, do you have thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's easy to blame Wenger and him not having a plan, but if you look back at every single goal, it's individual errors.
Okay.
So then you can maybe blame Wenger for selecting him.
Okay.
It's like if you look back at the first goal.
There we go.
Yeah, let's start with the first goal. Yeah, what are the individual errors on that Arjen Robben sort of cutting inside left foot curler to the top corner?
So the first goal, it's a 3v3 situation on the right-hand side, and you've got Coquelin pushing Robben on his left foot.
Yeah.
And everyone talks about Robben, that he does the same thing, but still people can't stop him.
Yeah, we did a whole show yesterday where we explained the concept of inverted wingers and players cutting in on their left foot from the right and how dangerous that is. And we used Robben as the example.
Yep.
Yeah, so unfortunately Coquelin is pushing him inwards instead of pushing him outwards.
Right.
And outwards he's got 2 more defenders to help him out.
Yeah.
If they're going to cross it, but obviously lets him cut inside. And
so why? So for maybe listeners who aren't as familiar with this idea of like pushing a winger to the outside or the inside, why would Coquelin be pushing Robben inside?
My honest to goodness read on the situation is that he bets on himself too much, and I think it's that he sees that there are numbers outside, but there are numbers for Bayern as well as Arsenal on the outside. Whereas inside, if you force him in, the idea, especially if it's a traditional winger, is that, it's going to be on his weaker foot, I'll force him in, then I'll go in for that hard tackle. And I think that's what he's trying to do. That's why he kind of cheats to the left and then steps to the right.
It's like a hop to the left, right?
And I think he bets on himself to force the player inside onto his weaker foot. You win that tackle, and then you're off. He forgets, however, that it's the one player who everyone in the world knows wants to cut in on the inside with his left foot, and it's Arjen Robben. And so in that situation, it seems like maybe, again, it goes back to the individual errors, but it also goes back to you need a manager who's... I mean, if Diego Simeone is in charge of Arsenal, does anyone ever let Arjen Robben come inside?
No.
I don't think so, because he will scream at them until their face falls off.
Crucify him.
Exactly. So in this situation, I have to believe it is individual error, but it's also a lack of having this plan drilled into your brain that don't let this happen. And it happens later, which is how other goals happen, but we'll get to those later.
Do you think it's a lack of leadership on the field?
I mean, if we're going...
Who's wearing the armband today? Gibbs later on? Was it Koscielny
in the beginning? And yeah, I think so. And maybe that's the problem of having a centre back as your captain, is they're kind of not up there to get everybody going. I always forget how protective you are of centre backs. But I mean, Pav, I know you're Huddersfield. I know you're also Manchester United. And I think about if Roy Keane, for example, were in there and somebody made that mistake, they're going to hear about it.
They also think about the old Arsenal of when they had Patrick Vieira. Mm-hmm. Would you get away with something like that?
You absolutely would not.
His long legs would have been able to reach across and block it even after he'd gone the wrong way.
Yeah, I think everyone's work rate of that Arsenal was so high.
Mm-hmm. You mean of the old Arsenal?
Yeah, of the old Arsenal.
Yeah.
It's definitely not today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. So I think you have those kind of individual letdowns, and then you have, at least on that first goal, that moment of brilliance from Arjen Robben to, hit it exactly where he had to hit it, right? What did you call it, like the postage stamp goal?
Yeah, that's where you put the postage stamp.
Yeah.
When you're about to send a letter,
corner.
very top corner.
Yeah.
Royal Mail is very reliable, I guess.
And to be fair, I think it's, maybe it's how you guys do it in England, but in America, it goes on the right-hand side. So otherwise, it's an astute point. He put it where you write your own name on the envelope, I think, is what I'll say.
Okay, so weirdly, Arsenal equalised, right?
Yep.
We were predicting in studio massive Arsenal collapse at this point, right?
Yep.
It begins, that just the unfolding begins, the unravelling begins. Arsenal equalise because Robert Lewandowski gives away a penalty. If I remember correctly, he's essentially trying to swing and clear, and Koscielny gets there first and takes a kick for the team, wins a penalty kick.
Yeah.
Do we agree with Stu Holden that that's definitely a penalty kick?
I did not at the time, and I would say our friend here has convinced me otherwise.
Okay,
I agree.
So,
even though he's got no awareness of the attacker,
Lewandowski.
Of Lewandowski, he's still who nips the ball first?
Koscielny.
Koscielny nips the ball, and then he gets kicked.
Yeah.
And he could control the ball if he didn't get the kick. So you could argue.
Yeah. So you're saying if Lewandowski hadn't kicked him, Koscielny realistically could have had the ball on
could
some
have controlled the ball.
Yeah.
And I might be wrong here. Pav, you may remember this as well, but Daryl, do you remember? I think it was Arsenal last season. It was a very similar situation when somebody subbed on and immediately conceded a penalty, and it was something like this. I can't remember the specifics of the situation, but I want to say it was an Arsenal player subbed on and basically it was Aaron Ramsey, went to clear the ball and didn't notice that a player had run in and kicked the player, conceded a penalty. And it was very similar in this situation, and that's actually what makes me kind of change my thinking a little bit, because at the time I thought he was trying to clear the ball. Coquelin comes in, gets a touch to it. I don't think he's necessarily going to control it that cleanly. So maybe it was just a 50-50 and unlucky challenge. But you're right. There's contact. The other players come in, has at least exercised some control on the ball, and he goes down. So I guess it is justifiably a penalty, although for a moment it was a ball don't lie situation.
Of course, I forgot. Sanchez, Neuer saves the penalty.
He does.
Sanchez whiffs the rebound.
Or it's a very deceptive fake, one or the other.
And then chests it down like he's one of his pecs and then sort of volleys it into the far corner. Okay, I'm going to put a theory out. The fact that he whiffs is what throws off the Bayern defenders.
I mean, I think it's everyone is thrown off by the chaos at the moment. Yeah, and then Neuer is very angry at his team for failing to react and failing to clear. I don't know. I mean, I feel like in that situation they easily could have conceded another penalty.
I think he's also angry because of Alexis Sanchez's finish.
Yeah,
he's got no right to score with. I think he's got three defenders behind him, and he still manages to kind of squeeze it in. Mm-hmm. So I can understand the frustration.
Yeah. Is it more that Neuer's made a great save and he's just angry that wasn't good enough to stop a goal in the end?
Yeah. I mean, no goalkeeper is going to be happy if you save a penalty and then you concede on the rebound.
Can we talk about this idea that maybe Alexis Sanchez, I'm treading very carefully here, Alexis Sanchez is the type of player that Arsenal need, if they are going to be the type of team that challenges Bayern, challenges for Premier Leagues. He's the only one that seems to be doing those next level things like scoring a rebound on a penalty, and he was the one that ran the ball back to the centre circle, was getting everybody back when Giroud was doing his dancing after the late equaliser. You remember that? I'm just starting to worry that watching this game, I saw Alexis Sanchez so many times be so frustrated that this might be the game that broke his commitment to Arsenal.
I mean, there are many games that could have broken his commitment, is what I would say. I would add that, I mean, at the very least, he is a professional in the sense that I didn't see him get visibly exasperated. We didn't see the hands in the air. We didn't see the screaming. We did see that from other Arsenal players.
I saw one moment of Sanchez just standing like a statue still, even like he's sort of going, okay, deep breath.
But I mean, I think, to your question, I think so. That if it's a big game, obviously, it's finally not Barcelona in a knockout round, which is a rarity for Arsenal. And I think, and it probably would maybe hurt a little bit more if it were Barcelona, specifically for Alexis Sanchez. But, I mean, I think that on these types of big games where it's Arsenal maybe not going to win the league this season, haven't won the league with Alexis Sanchez and in a while. So maybe this is the one where you think, okay, this is where we're going to have an impact. This is why I signed for a club like this. And when it doesn't go your way, I imagine there's frustration that builds up for sure. All
right, next goal. Bayern Munich in the 8 minutes into the second half. It's Philipp Lahm burns down that right wing for one of the final times, right? He's only got a few months left till he waves goodbye.
I didn't appreciate that as I'm 32. And Pav, you're 12? Is that correct?
Got 13 in a month.
No, but Pav, you're
23.
There it is. But so for Daryl and I, who are over 30, I did not appreciate, I think, John Strong being like, look at him, he's still got some gas in those legs. It's like, he's 33. Like, he's not 80. Like, come on now. He's a world-class athlete.
You watch Giggsy?
Yeah, right? Exactly. Let's just calm it down here, guys.
All right, let's not turn this into the Man United
it's
show.
Ageism, that's all I'm saying.
But Philipp Lahm burns down that right wing, then I want to say lofts a ball to the far post. It hangs up there seemingly forever, allowing Lewandowski to climb and head it past Ospina.
Yes.
I want to blame Iwobi for this because he leaves Gibbs to be essentially 2-on-1 with Lahm and Robben. So Robben running at Gibbs and Lahm running outside him. Right? Iwobi should have tracked Philipp Lahm. Anyone want to defend Alex Iwobi?
No, and I'm imagining Pav is going to emphasize that because I think Pav was the one who pointed out that shouldn't Iwobi be doing something here?
It was 52nd minute if I'm not mistaken, and you can see Iwobi struggling.
Yep.
Yeah. He is struggling. He's dragging his legs around, and then it's the perfect situation for Philipp Lahm because he's in a 2v1 situation, and then he gets a cross in.
Yeah.
Even though the cross that he gets in, he puts so much height on it, which is extremely hard for someone as a striker to put that inside the goal.
Yeah. So, credit to Lewandowski for
especially with
to
Pav's point, with the power that he does, because usually if it's that kind of like moon ball that's dropping down and you're contesting it, which he is, he jumps over Mustafi, I think it is. It's going to be tough to get that power behind it as well. It's the most you can do just to kind of get contact to it. So the power he generates, it points to how strong of a striker Robert Lewandowski is. But yes, it also points to the weakness of Alex Iwobi's defense and the overall
and maybe
Arsenal
Arsenal's
defense.
fitness.
Yeah, you're right, though, because you're right. It's not just that it's 52nd, though. It's that 7 minutes after halftime as well.
Yeah, and we were noticing, even before the goal, it was second half, and it was 1-1, and most Arsenal players were like statues. They were like, shouldn't they're fighting? It's 1-1. They've just scored a goal before half-time. Go out there, prove a point, score a goal.
Yeah.
Is it about also Bayern passing the ball around them endlessly, Arsenal getting demoralised?
Yeah.
Right? It's not necessarily laziness, it's more just like... Because Iwobi's legs really looked heavy. And we were talking about age earlier. Iwobi's a young man. Iwobi is not in his 30s. Or even close.
It's also not a style of play Arsenal are used to.
Chasing
around, yeah.
Then we're like, shouldn't it be us with the ball?
I mean, that's a fair point. I think it's also worth noting. I think you said... maybe like 90 seconds before this goal happened. I mean, to be fair, Arsenal are the happier of the two teams with the 1-1 draw. And so I do think that maybe that game plan coming out of the half was sit back, don't overcommit, force them out wide, don't let Robben come inside, and then we can kind of react to those crosses into the box because generally it's only going to be one guy.
That's what we thought the plan was. Keep your defensive shape and then maybe break on the counter. But, I mean, Iwobi clearly didn't at that specific point of the game.
Yeah, and I think then with Iwobi dropping back the way he did, Daryl, I think it was your point that, like, is he doing what he's doing because he's afraid of Robben cutting inside again?
Oh, yeah, because he's then covering the space. If Robben had cut in and done that Arjen Robben thing, Iwobi would have been there to stop him, but he wasn't there to stop them. Philipp Lahm, really, it was almost like he was on the chalk, just running all the way down. And I know it's paint and not chalk, but... Right, if we're talking Arsenal dysfunction, I think absolutely the key to this whole game is the third goal, which is the goal that Thiago Alcantara scores with the very nice little flick. I don't know what to call that move ever. The like dragon flick from Lewandowski that puts him through. Thiago's in all kinds of space, and at first we're just not sure why there's a massive gap between Mustafi and Gabriel, who's come on for Koscielny. Pav spotted it, right? This is the problem with the whole Arsenal team. I just want to give the floor to you, Pav, to explain what happened here.
Yeah, so Mustafi is frustrated with one of his teammates. I'm not sure who it was. I think it's either Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain or...
And Coquelin. They're both...
and
they're
Coquelin,
both
because they're not pressing, as they should. And I can understand his frustration because it was happening the entire game. There was no pressing. I'm not sure what the orders were from Wenger. But he's complaining at a point where he shouldn't. Yeah. And then as he's complaining, the ball is probably in one of the most dangerous positions a ball can be.
Yeah.
So he's looking outright, and Lewandowski backheels it to Thiago, who isn't being followed by anyone.
Yeah.
And he just has a very easy tap in. And then after they concede the goal, Mustafi proceeds to scream to the players that weren't pressing instead of being frustrated at himself for not keeping his defensive shape.
Yeah, I mean, that's his number one priority. I would also add, though, that like it's even slightly defensible if he's continuing to scream at those midfielders of like you're trying to organize maybe a little bit because Koscielny's gone, so you're the one who's stepping up there. Except that I think when that ball is played, he's looking at Gabriel. And to me, it looks almost like he is looking at Gabriel like, right? Isn't this crazy? Like, shouldn't they be stepping? Like, he's looking at him as like, can you believe these guys? And then his man runs by.
You should imagine like a water cooler in between.
Yeah, it's like he stopped for a moment to have a quick chat.
That's kind of like when you have an argument with someone and you know they're wrong, so they just start screaming on top of the voice.
But that's the point.
Like, I'm just going to leave.
Mustafi like starts out being correct, right? It would have been better if Oxlade-Chamberlain and Coquelin had pressed.
Yep.
But what makes him wrong is continuing to yell at them while the player's developing and Thiago is running in past him.
As the ball is moving toward the danger area.
Exactly, But then to yell at them again afterwards, then he's wrong because it's his fault. If he focused on playing in the Champions League instead of yelling at his teammates, it would have had a better result.
Yeah, but I imagine I'm trying to think of like a fair comparison. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but like it's the rough equivalent of like, I don't know, like using a hammer, like you're hammering at a nail and you start screaming at somebody and then you hammer your hand with the hammer and you're like, that's your fault too. like that's what it felt like.
That's a perfect DIY analogy. Spoken like a man who recently did a lot of DIY.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And then again, I really feel like now things really start to fall apart. We think about Thiago's goal, his next goal. It's the fourth Bayern goal. Don't want to go into too much detail, but basically he hits it from top of the box. It hits Xhaka, and that's what beats Ospina. But we noticed that when the ball is cleared from the corner, Thiago has, 10 yards in front of him?
The entire time.
Yeah.
The entire time.
And what's one of the things you do when you're defending a corner, Pav?
Yeah, so you usually put one person in the front post, one person in the back post, one person at the penalty area, and then one person to be looking around what's happening on the outside of the box.
Yeah, because the ball can go elsewhere than the penalty area, right?
Yeah, so there was a few knockabouts, and then Thiago just had so much space the entire time, and then it fell to him, And he obviously they got a bit lucky with the deflection, but he still hasn't got any right to have so much space outside the box.
Yeah, and I mean, and to that point, and I would say I apologize to Arsenal fans because I know this sounds like we're just like kind of like turning that
Arsenal
knife.
fans will not have listened to this show for the most part. Because I mean, would you if your team had lost 5-1? It's painful to listen to, right?
Except for like I don't know, maybe just to like have the pain be that much more that much more palpable.
To wallow.
But I would say that even like that is a good example of the discipline of Bayern versus the discipline of Arsenal, because you're right. It bounces around in the box. There's different players dropping back to try to head clear. The player who doesn't move is Thiago, who stays in the exact position where he needs to be, and because he stays there, because he doesn't get sucked into the kind of scrum in the box, that's why he's wide open at the top. You have Arsenal players who maybe could conceivably step to him and mark him, but instead they're dropping back to try to do that kind of scramble. I'm here to help. But when everyone's dropping back to
Arsenal players
help,
kind of jump into each other trying to clear it as well. So one of them could have stepped out and maybe blocked Thiago.
But
if say SNL focused on Champions League instead of other things, one of the sketches they might have is Thiago standing at the top of the box, like maybe already while the ball's bouncing around, dropping a blade of grass, checking the wind, preparing for his shot, because he has forever. He has forever to prepare for that shot.
But do you understand? Like, we've all experienced this before. When you're playing like that high press, or you're like everyone has a responsibility in defense. There is that inclination to, like, if I drop back and if I'm facing the field of play, then I'm doing my job because no one can dribble by. I'm contributing to defense. But if you have 8 people crowding into the box to try to help out with defense, you're not worried about what else is going on around you. You're worried about not being the one who's at fault almost, because then you're not the one who's individually beaten. Your whole team is collectively defending.
Yeah.
But that leads to other individuals on the opposite side able to take advantage of that sort of standoffishness, and that's exactly what I think Thiago did.
Well, we all play indoor for Richmond City, and we do a man-marking pressing system, and no one's allowed to just sit back and not do anything.
David Wagner press.
Is that what it's called now?
Yeah, Wagner press.
You tell our team that's what we're doing tonight and see what confused looks you get.
Better than Klopp. Yeah.
You guys do that while I stand to the sidelines and nod approvingly. That's more my role in this situation.
More in the Mustafi role.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, let's close it out with the 5th goal. It's Thomas Muller comes off the bench, and I think within about 20 seconds has the ball in the back of the net, and he's screaming in celebration.
and to me that wasn't surprising because that's what we've seen Thomas Muller do before. Pav, it seems like you've watched maybe a little bit more Bayern, you're a little more familiar with them, and maybe it's not quite the case this season.
Yeah, this season he's been playing out of position. I wouldn't say out of position because he's played right mid.
Because he can go anywhere.
Yeah, because he can play anywhere, but he's played right mid for Germany, but for Bayern Munich last season, if I'm not mistaken, he was playing behind the striker, right under Pep Guardiola, and this season as a right mid, he's only scored 2 or 3 goals, and I think 8 or 9 assists, so he's been under a lot of criticism, and that's why he's been on the bench.
Bayern have different standards, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at their bench, I'd say in a number of ways they have different standards. But that's actually really interesting because going all the way back to the very beginning, we were wondering, Daryl and I were, about why it seemed like at least in the first half, it was Robben tucked very much inside and Costa staying. No, excuse me, the opposite. It was Costa staying, or Robben staying wide, Costa coming inside. Second half, that flipped a little bit. And it does make me wonder if maybe that is to, like, kind of help Thomas Muller find that form again, because if he doesn't want to be playing out wide, if you're playing him as a winger, but that winger is lining up inside very often, it kind of suits his game a little bit more. And this goal maybe showed that.
Oh, yeah. So it's. Unfortunately, we have to point the finger this time at Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I'm sure Mustafi will be shown in this goal. He coughs the ball up, first of all, and then I think it's Muller beats him before he scores as well. So how did Bayern make that happen? And I'm directing this question to Pavlos.
Yeah, I think what happened is, if I remember correctly, is that Arsenal has got the ball in the final third, and Bayern Munich is keep on pushing him backwards.
Yeah.
So the ball ends up going back to Ospina, who he then passes it to one of the defenders, and then Oxlade-Chamberlain asks for the ball.
Yeah.
But he
very confidently, right?
Very confidently asks for the ball, and he's only got one option, and that is Kieran Gibbs on the left-hand side. But then once he receives the ball, it takes a touch, and then he's not certain what he's going to do with it because he hasn't got any options because all of his options are closed down.
I'm pretty sure he heard Thomas Muller's footsteps as well.
Thomas Muller footsteps, which is great pressing from Bayern Munich, so they get the ball and then they end up scoring. So then it comes into question that is it Chamberlain's fault or is it Arsenal's fault because they didn't give him any options?
The answer is yes to both.
Because he should be thinking what he's going to do with the ball before he receives it.
Yeah.
That's one argument.
I think to go like the very basic answer to this, I would say, if anything, that's the most obvious example I can think of in recent memory of a team that's just kind of given up. Because at that point, I mean, there are any number of reasons why they're in that position where they've had to be passing backwards all the way, why they're maybe not as positionally aware and as positionally supported as they could be. But in the end, I think it's just sort of not a lot of people really trying to work and move. It's the 88th minute. It's 4-1. We're just trying to get out of here with our somewhat dignity still intact. And because no one seems to be really trying to work for it that much more, you end up having this situation in which Oxlade-Chamberlain is isolated. So I'd say he could probably do better, if nothing else, than just hoof the ball away. But by the same token, he doesn't have much support.
Are you saying if Arsenal hadn't, quote, given up, then players would have been charging backwards to provide options for Oxlade-Chamberlain instead of kind of standing up there watching him?
You've probably got a different psychology as a player when your team is up 3-1 and when you're down 3-1. So maybe things would work out better for him.
And to clarify, I've been in plenty of these games where it's just I'm not making that 40-yard sprint. This game is over. We'll get him next
CBSA
week.
versus Champions League round of 16.
I mean, I'm just saying, that's not me saying,
and therefore there's a
systemic problem. It's just more of no, I mean, I can kind of see in that moment of, I think I know what I'm doing, but then you get the ball, maybe you don't have the confidence to try to turn and go at somebody, maybe you're just a little bit slow because you've been in the whole game and working really hard, and then you've got three guys who are very up for it. And never mind the fact that two of the people who put him under pressure are Thomas Muller and Joshua Kimmich, both of whom were second-half subs.
True.
So they're a little bit more feisty, they're a little bit more ready to go. Yeah, exactly. Oh, did they? Yeah. Well, what give it away? When they scored the goal right away? Yeah.
Tyler, people will be mad at us if we don't point out that this goal is a Thomas Muller hello.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think it is.
Not just because he comes off the bench and scores. So there's that Thomas Muller hello surprise appearance thing. There's also the after he's forced a turnover, the way he sort of drifts away from the defenders to the right, so he's suddenly in a load of space.
And to be fair, he forces the turn from Oxlade-Chamberlain. I think it's Kimmich who actually wins the ball off and drives forward. And that's where I think the Muller hello comes into play. Because, again, a player who's maybe a little bit demoralized, doesn't have that energy, is good enough, we've won the ball, we're going to goal. I'll sit here and watch and hopefully they score. But Thomas Muller does his weird baby gazelle
he's
run.
Always there.
Gets in there and stays wide. Yeah, he's always there. But he's always there, but he's always just not there enough that people don't focus on him. And in this situation, gets the ball out wide, then everybody has to react to it. By the time they react, he is in a position to be able to anticipate that reaction, cuts back inside, beats two players, gets the shot off, and it's a good goal. Yeah, and he's very pleased with it, it seems.
Yeah, he's the kind of player that is all of his individual attributes, physically and technically, are so average. But I think it's just his mental game, his attacking awareness is so good that makes him world class.
Even watching him, we watched the video earlier of him closing down Oxlade-Chamberlain. He even runs incorrectly. That is not a good running style.
Johnny Cash has the song where it's one piece at a time, where it's about how he works at a Cadillac factory and builds a Cadillac over 50 years. That's what Thomas Muller is. He's spare parts of different footballers that didn't quite make it put together, and he makes one good footballer somehow.
Frankenmuller.
Yeah, there you go. Beautiful. We've got another Thomas Muller line to use now. Well done, Daryl.
All right, we're going to have to wave goodbye to Pav pretty soon. Before you go, Pav, Taylor, any closing thoughts on this game? For example, could there be a dramatic Arsenal comeback at the Emirates?
I mean, anything is possible. No, it's not possible. I don't think so. And I think I'm happy to stay away from is this the end of Arsene Wenger conversation? But I'll say I think that conversation is only going to intensify after this game.
I feel like we've had it so many times.
Over the last 12 years, like we were talking before, they've won one FA Cup or two FA Cups?
I think 2 FA Cups.
All right, well, now that I've said I want to stay out of it, I'm going to wade right into it. I think the difference is that in years past, it hasn't felt possible. It's sort of like what we've talked about with Jurgen Klinsmann before with the U.S. national team, that even when there were times when the U.S. was clearly underperforming and did not look good, it never felt like a realistic possibility. Yeah. So there were times in years past when Arsenal lost their season opener and drew the next one, everybody's like, this is it. And it's it's the second game of the season.
Well, I also remember when Manchester United beat them 8-2.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys remember that for obvious reasons. I remember that at the time. A lot of people were like, oh, that's it. He's got to go.
Yeah. But I feel like at a certain point, you reach that tipping point where that story, it happens with such increased regularity that it kind of builds up, and you do reach that point where it does seem like it's a possibility. It does seem like we've gotten to that point.
And logistically, what are we at? He hasn't signed a new contract. I think his contract's up at the end of the season. So instead of it being like a firing, it might just be that he quietly shuffles out the door.
He came out at the end of last season and he said that I am going to reassess myself after the first half of the season. That's why you probably mentioned, Taylor, that is untouchable, and that you've got a feeling that he's never actually going to get the sack. Because he makes the decision of whether he stays or not.
Yeah, that's fair.
And also they wouldn't do that to him, right? They wouldn't send him out of the club with a sacking because it would be too embarrassing.
Right. Yeah. And so to clarify, I don't think that like after this game he's going to get home and there's going to be what's the confidence talks? We have complete confidence in the manager, which always spells death. Yeah. No, I mean I think there's no chance he gets fired this season or anything like that, but I think there's a decent chance that it's another negative story. It's going to be more tabloids saying, is this it? Can he figure it out? Is he not a top-tier manager? And I think at a certain point it becomes sort of not worth it for Arsene Wenger, who's probably pretty confident in the money he's made and in his overall managerial ability.
But also that might get instilled in the players as well, all the speculation about Wenger's future, about not the winning mentality and so on. Maybe that's why the players are underperforming. Yeah. Because it's not always a manager, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, in any situation when things seem to have turned a little bit for the manager, I mean, players can sense that, and they're sort of like, well, I mean, look at Man City last season when they know that Pellegrini's not going to be there anymore. It's not exactly a motivator to go out there and play.
You can see that with Leicester as well this year. Yeah, the work rate is...
Whatever do you mean? They look so good this season. By the way, still in the Champions League. Let's remember that.
Yeah, they'll probably win the Champions League and they'll be playing against Rotherham next year in the Championship.
Well, if they do, we'll have you here since you're... Except maybe Huddersfield won't be there.
Yeah, hopefully not in the Championship next year.
All right, we're going to wrap up part one. We're going to say goodbye to Pav. Pav, high five.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
We're going to take a short break for a sponsor.
That's right. Today's sponsor is SeatGeek. The good folks at SeatGeek have come along and created an amazing app and website that makes it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell tickets.
I have that app on my phone.
Attaboy.
It is a ticket aggregator. You have all kinds of tickets, all kinds of events. You can search through it. Guess what I found happening right here in Richmond, Taylor?
What have you found, my friend?
WWE SmackDown Live. I have never been to a wrestling event, but WWE is coming to Richmond.
It's funny how, I'll say this, SeatGeek does make me, it turns out, more inclined to go see stuff. Not just because it makes it easier to buy the tickets, but also because it makes it easy to know what's coming to town. So, for example, last weekend...
I just remembered you sent me that text from there.
I went to Monster Jam. That I did. I went and saw some monster trucks, crushed some things.
You sent me a photo of the zombie truck,
I sent you one of Zombie and one of Gravedigger, yes.
So is it like is it kind of like WWE? Like they got a recurring cast of characters?
I think so,
And is Gravedigger just Undertaker with wheels?
I mean, yes. I forget what his music is. He has
Sounds like a copyright infringement now, I think.
And I actually had this question for the people that went with me, because there were 6 of us who went.
Yeah.
My question was, what is it about Gravedigger that everyone knows? Because I think most people, if you said, name me a monster truck, they would say Gravedigger. And I don't think it's just an East Coast thing. Gravedigger is from Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. They announced that several times over the speakers in the amphitheater.
Contractually, maybe?
I don't know. Or they just ran out of copy points. Who knows?
Well, Did
we mention that Gravedigger's from Kill Devil Hills as we pause for a moment while we try to flip this car over? They had to do that a lot.
Well, if you wanted to go see a monster truck, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Or if you wanted to go see...
Monster Jam.
I apologise. Or if you wanted to see WWE SmackDown in Richmond, but elsewhere, it's also in Dallas, Edmonton, Bakersfield. Oh, well, there is a long list of places where WWE are. It's basically a rolling tour, right?
Correct.
Yes. I'm new to this country.
There we are.
If you would like a $20 rebate on a ticket, you can do that via SeatGeek.
That's right. Just download the SeatGeek app, go to the Settings tab, and click Add a Promo Code. Enter the promo code TSS. SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase.
So download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code TSS today.
There we are. It's an easy way to watch monster trucks and wrestling. What more do you need in life?
Okay, so we've talked about one Champions League butt kicking. Bayern 5, Arsenal 1. The other one was Tuesday. It was PSG 4, Barcelona 0. Nobody saw this coming, especially not me. My episode of The Goalmouth, I believe I predicted a 1-0 win for Barcelona.
I mean, you're talking about slaughters here, and I think if we knew, like talking about that game now, we would have guessed it was the other way around. That it was. I heard it. It was fine. We would have guessed it was probably the other way around, that it was Barcelona 4. So it is pretty surprising, although once you watch the game twice, it becomes less surprising.
So here's the thing. On the Goalmouth prediction, I think I said that it's not Zlatan's PSG, so don't expect a big performance. Expect a 1-0 win for Barcelona. I have since been convinced that it's not Zlatan's PSG, which is actually a good thing for PSG when they come up against really good opposition like Barcelona.
I believe a certain English accented gentleman made that point earlier in the office.
Said it in like a Yorkshire accent.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about PSG's game plan, which was executed more or less to perfection.
Yeah, and it's a credit to the Fox Soccer or Fox Sports people, because at halftime they did a pretty good job of diagramming how kind of consistently PSG were pressing, but pressing with that intelligence that we've seen from other teams that are very famous for the press. So those Dortmund, Liverpool teams, where it's basically everybody stepping at the exact right moment to kind of force the opposition back to eventually having to kick it out. Luckily, because there was one moment when Ter Stegen almost had played it off of Cavani, and it could have been a very awkward goal. So it's the kind of step-by-step press combined with other players filling in, and I think that's the key component, is that we talked about the double single pivot on yesterday's show.
Yes.
The obvious person being the single pivot would be Sergio Busquets.
Yes, we talked about him as the pinnacle of pivots.
Yeah, and I like to believe that PSG heard that episode and thought, then we're going to mark him, and that's exactly what happened.
And the weird thing to me is they had Cavani, who's their centre forward. He was the guy that kind of dropped back a little bit and either marked Busquets or just cut off the supply line to Busquets. The weird thing is when you think of a press, you would think of the forward as being the farthest forward, so he'd be the guy that's maybe in Ter Stegen's face.
Right.
Instead, he's blocking off everything going through Busquets.
Yeah, but then we talked about this with Colombia in the Copa America, how they had that sort of trigger and then they would all go. And that's what you'd see is Cavani sitting, the whole team sitting back a little bit, and then once that initial press is triggered, everybody slowly slides up the field.
Yeah.
And suddenly Barcelona are outnumbered and either have to kick it out of bounds or turn the ball over or kick it up the field. Because that was the thing that really stood out for me, is how many times did we see Gerard Piqué, for example, hoof the ball really with no objective. It was just, we got to get it out of here.
I kept rubbing my eyes. Really?
It was odd, yeah. It was Gerard Piqué and Sergio Roberto having a Sergio Roberto-esque game. Yeah, not the strongest of performances.
He's making Dani Alves look better every single week, right? Here's the other thing from PSG, though. It wasn't just the press, right? It wasn't like a fast and furious Jurgen Klopp press them all the time kind of thing. They also had a second look, which is when Barcelona did progress and did that thing where they start possessing it around about the halfway line. PSG then all drop back, right? So they have everybody in their own half, and still Cavani blocking the path to Busquets, either by standing next to him or around him or just making sure. It's almost like he was just shielding him the whole time.
And I think a big part of that was the idea that at that point, I think that was in the second half, or maybe near the end of the first half, PSG already 1-0 up, 2-0 up. They can afford to sit off a little bit. Barcelona obviously need to chase the game, need to try to get that away goal.
Yeah.
And what would routinely happen is Barca would have possession for 3 minutes at a time, and would kind of go nowhere with it. It would be left to right, holding the ball. And that was the other thing that stood out was, we saw Andres Iniesta put his foot on the ball multiple times in this game. That's not something you usually see. Yeah, usually it's that kind of quick tempo, quick passing. He's able to pick out his spots and find open players. Really couldn't do that in this game.
Was he looking for Xavi Hernandez?
Potentially. If so,
Xavi would have been here.
He was looking in the past, I would say. So that was the game plan in terms of a defensive scheme from PSG. But then weirdly, there are aspects of PSG's game that kind of mirrored what Barcelona have come to epitomize. Specifically, the third goal, I believe it is, comes from a goal kick, from a PSG goal kick. It's either the third or the fourth goal. Comes from a PSG goal kick that they are hell-bent on passing out.
Right.
To the extent that there are 3 Barcelona attackers, that front 3, the MSN front 3, are all standing on the 18 waiting for that ball to be
Neymar's
kicked in.
revving up, ready to go, right?
And they still go for it, PSG. And
they give it to Rabiot, I think.
They do. He turns, he plays it out, and it's a kind of shaky passage of play. There's 3 different players who are involved in it, but eventually they're able to pass their way out of it, and they have, as a result, bypassed 6 players from Barcelona.
It's the left back Kazawa, who I really hadn't paid much attention to until I want to say this afternoon when we watched this game. And he accelerates through, and basically once he gets past, I can't remember who it is, but once he gets past a midfielder,
Messi. It's Messi who's hassling him.
Leo Messi. Suddenly the field is wide open. He can drive down. I think he gives it to Di Maria, and that's when Di Maria pulls that move.
Yeah, and I still don't know if he means to do this or if it really is just an awkward stumble. But either way, Di Maria kind of feints as though he's going back to his right. One player in particular who buys that is Jordi Alba, who runs 10 yards to the opposite direction.
He's still running in that direction.
He's sure. I think, you mean right now he's still going? Yeah. And because of that, because he bites that fake, Di Maria sells it, takes that extra touch, buries it with that left foot, bends it around the goalkeeper into the side netting. But it's because of that little feint, and it's also because they're catching Barcelona in a state of transition.
Puts it in the British place where you put a postage stamp.
There it is. Yes, I believe that's correct.
So how come we haven't mentioned Verratti yet? I came here today to talk about Verratti. I've been all about Verratti for a while. This was the game where it looked to me like Marco Verratti outclassed the Barcelona midfield. He out-Barcelonaed them.
Yeah, and now we've mentioned him, so we should move on. No, go ahead. Talk about why.
Well, I mean, so there are lots of just impressive little slide tackles, which I always enjoy one of those, even when they're not 100% necessary. I think it adds a necessary element of drama. But mostly it was about splitting the players, right? Like so many times Verratti would play those balls between two Barcelona midfielders and he would find Rabiot or he'd find Di Maria, and suddenly whatever defensive plan Barcelona had in midfield is gone because there's a ball gone straight through the middle of it.
Sometimes it would be both, because I think he assists on the second goal, the Draxler goal, and I'm pretty sure he slides to play that ball. So he ends up on the ground regardless. But so that's really well done, and obviously like the vision he has to play some of those balls that again are more reminiscent of like Barcelona of years past.
Yeah.
But it is also, you mentioned that slide, and that does remind me that multiple times Verratti and Rabiot, they would complete passes by tackling. Like there'd be those little poke passes, there'd be like the little last-dish tackles that would get the ball, but it would get the ball playing it to their teammate. I forget who the second half substitute was. Played for DR Congo at youth level, now plays for France. But he is from PSG's academy, and he has one where he double tackles Leo Messi, and both times it's just a little bit of a poke, but it's enough to dispossess Messi, so then he has to try to regain possession, and then it's another poke away. Messi ends up on the floor. But it's those little last-ditch tackles that are under control that lead to another attacking play that I think kind of stand out in my mind from that PSG midfield.
Speaking of moments that stand out in your mind, right? The stuff we noticed about Cavani was only on sort of second viewing and really looking for what are PSG doing. And I feel like a lot of what Cavani did will go unnoticed by a lot of people, right? Because just blocking a pass to Busquets by standing next to him there's not a big highlight reel of that, right? But he does get a magnificent goal.
Yeah. I mean, it's well taken. It is sort of, it does make me wonder if like Edson Cavani just can't score obvious goals, because he does seem to miss the kind of sitter chances. And in this situation, it's basically lets it run across him, takes a touch, and hits it near post. I mean, Ter Stegen doesn't do anything particularly wrong. I mean, he does like the kind of split save, and it just like by a half inch misses the underside of his cleat. So it's a really well taken goal, and I guess it speaks to Cavani knowing his angle, which I think is impressive. But I think the other thing that I think is important to note there is just that there is this idea with PSG that David Luiz is gone. We've talked about this previously. David Luiz is gone. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is gone.
Thiago Silva was injured as well.
Yeah, but it's also like, so maybe it's sort of like a weakened PSG. They don't quite have the firepower they used to. Edson Cavani has been linked with every club in Europe, I think. So to see him come out and execute a game plan, it's an impressive goal. It's an impressive game overall. And I think you also have to give credit to Unai Emery.
Yes, what did you call PSG when we saw this in studio yesterday?
Sevilla with money.
Expensive Sevilla.
Yeah, there it is. But I mean because that's what they look like. They look like a Sevilla who've won the Europa League, I think 46 times in a row. Could be wrong on that one, but I mean that's what they look like. They look like a pressing team that were incredibly well organized, as much of a cliche as that is to say. But everybody knew their role. Everybody executed that game plan. But then you also have world class players, or players who are paid like world class players.
I'm going to say Verratti's up there, world class.
I mean, Verratti, I think you can. Yeah, go Verratti. You could say Cavani. You could say Di Maria. You could say Draxler.
Draxler on the way. Yeah,
I'd say Rabiot. Seems like he's on the way as well. Looking pretty good. And another, I think, PSG Academy product. So not bad there.
Or at least he's been there since he was young. I'm not sure.
And in the TSS Scouting Network, that counts too.
Yes, so Scouting Network stuff to come.
Yep.
Final thing I want to get to is PSG's fullbacks versus Barcelona's fullbacks.
Yeah.
We mentioned Alba going in the wrong direction. At least one of the goals is sort of Sergio Roberto's fault. He's kind of indecisive and doesn't quite get his defensive shape right. On the flip side, Kazawa pulls off that dribble for what ends up being the Di Maria goal. Meunier, I believe, drives forward and gets the assist for Cavani. And it just sort of, I just want to make the general point that even when you think of like the star players in these big teams, it's actually really important who your fullbacks are. And I almost want to say possibly Sergio Roberto is not good enough to be Barcelona's starting fullback if they've got ambitions of winning things like the Champions League.
Yeah, at least in this game, he looked like he didn't have the confidence, and he looked like he didn't have the decision-making capability that, say, those two PSG outside backs did.
He looks like he also hasn't played fullback his entire life.
And it's definitely a fair point. I think it's also worth noting that this seemed to concern you, that Meunier was a talented fullback.
Oh, because I've got this feeling that if Belgium do figure out fullbacks,
how to play defense,
how to play with fullbacks instead of sticking centre backs out there, then suddenly they really will be this scary team that everybody's talking about.
I didn't know you had this lurking fear of Belgium. I don't know if that's a common feeling in England.
The Red Scare.
Did you watch In Bruges one too many times, and now you don't know what to think anymore?
That's what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
So if Belgium find a left back, then look out.
Yeah, I mean you're kind of not wrong. They're pretty good otherwise.
Only Tim Howard can save us.
Indeed.
All right, so I think we want to say second leg, don't even bother watching it.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? You're going to say that for real? How many times have we seen these games have those dramatic fight backs?
Let's DVR it, just in case.
Yeah.
We'll DVR both these second legs just in case. Otherwise, though, I feel like it's basically over on both counts.
And also for people screaming into their earbuds, I don't know if that's a thing that people do, but screaming into the wilderness, we know Alexi Lalas does that. Benfica also won 1-0 against Dortmund.
We'll watch that second leg, though, because we want to see if Pulisic can pull it off.
And Real Madrid, I believe, won 3-1. I don't know if they added another one in between the time of recording and me checking to see if they added another one.
It was 3-1 because they switched at the end of the Bayern game. Yeah.
So, I mean, that was at home, so you could say that Napoli got that away goal, so that's still pretty interesting. The Dortmund game, obviously, still pretty interesting for a number of reasons. These two games, seem slightly less compelling in terms of the second leg scorelines.
And much more Champions League to come in the next couple of weeks. They've spread out this round of 16 for our enjoyment, so we'll be back to that next midweek.
And then how much time are we dedicating to Man United Saint Etienne? I can't remember. Was it like an entire show or an entire week?
1 minute for each Pogba.
Okay. That's fair.
That might end up being true. We might do 2 minutes on that.
Okay. I'll take it.
Final thing on today's show, Taylor, the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. If you're not familiar, this is part of how we fund the show. Our listeners support us by subscribing to Total Soccer Show at totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. When you subscribe, we assign you a young, up-and-coming player to keep an eye on. We have 4 scouts, 4 scouting reports in front of us to read today. Would you like to get us started, Taylor? Who's up first?
I would, and you're going to regret that I went first in just a moment. But up first is Matt Graham, scouting Orbelin Pineda, the 20-year-old defensive midfielder for Chivas Guadalajara. Pineda scored his first goal of the season on Saturday against Atlas, and as Matt heard on the Goalmouth podcast, he can be seen playing against Club America on Saturday on Facebook Live in English at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. The game will also be broadcast in Spanish on Univision.
Why will I regret this?
You won't regret that. Go ahead and read the next report, Daryl.
Before we do, I just want to say, if you didn't hear the Goalmouth, go back and listen to Tuesday's Goalmouth for details of that Univision Liga MX Facebook Live deal. I think we're going to commit to watching that game, Club America, Chivas, and we'll have a report on it on Monday's Total Soccer Show. Okay, up next. Mark Bajarski is scouting Nathan Adua, the 20-year-old Nigerian winger. Not regretting it so far. Feeling good so far. Mark says, Spurs have announced that winger Nathan Adua has officially signed with Slovenian top-flight side Olimpia Ljubljana.
Okay, well done. That's why I thought you'd regret it.
I visited there, so I learned how to pronounce it. I did spend a week learning how to pronounce Ljubljana.
So that's all it takes for you to properly pronounce
just
things?
Just a week. Just 1 week's
week
prep.
In that specific location?
I can pronounce anything with 1 week's notice. The young Nigerian did not make a first-team appearance for Spurs, and after a few loan moves, it was clear it wasn't going to happen. It's probably a good move for Adua, but he needs to light it up to have any hope of making it back into one of the top 5 leagues in Europe.
Now, I think you also had some guilt regarding Nathan Adua.
We're not guilt, but like Mark asked us for a Spurs player to scout. We gave him a young, up-and-coming Spurs player. It just happened that Adua was up and going to Ljubljana instead.
We do have priors with this, though.
Yeah.
There was, I forget who it was,
how it works, though,
who
right?
asked for a young player who didn't play for Madrid or Manchester United, and we assigned Anthony Martial, who then signed for Manchester United like 4 weeks later. So we apologize, Mark.
Let's say to Mark, I'd still want to know what happens to Adua in Ljubljana, right? Yep. So you can't back out of Adua. But if you would like a fresh player as well to keep an eye on, we are open to suggestions, Mark.
Charlie Kelly found that out personally. You can't back out of Adua. And Tyler Dunaway reports that Gabriel Jesus, the 19-year-old winger for City, injured himself early in the match on Monday.
Surely. Isn't Gabriel Jesus a forward?
Winger forward, whatever you want to go with.
Right.
Injured himself early in the match on Monday against Bournemouth and had to be subbed off. It has been since been confirmed that he broke a bone in his foot and is out for 2 to 3 months. It sounds like there's a serious possibility that he misses the rest of the Premier League season.
You know who's happy about that?
Every Manchester United fan?
And Sergio Aguero.
Yeah, also that, yeah.
It's like, I'm back. All right, final scouting report we have today is from Richie Garcia, scouting the future of the US men's national team, Emerson Heinemann, 20-year-old midfielder for Rangers.
I'm silently shaking my head, listeners.
Richie, you ask me in 3 years, I guarantee this is happening.
You guarantee that he is the future of the US men's national team. I just want you to say that. In 3 years, he is the future. Or
he'll be the president. He'll be the president.
Okay, 3 years he will be the president of the U.S. national team.
In 10 years he'll be the past. All right, Rangers manager Mark Warburton resigned
Glad
this
we
week.
hammered that one out. That made a lot of sense. Go ahead.
Resigned this week under mysterious circumstances. Since Warburton signed Emerson to the loan deal, Richie says, I was concerned about this possible loss of playing time. But he lined up on the left side of a 4-3-3 under new manager Graham Murty. In this more advanced role, he had some positive touches and contributed to the game-winning goal when his shot deflected off the goalie and Martin Waghorn buried it.
That counts, right? That counts as an intentional assist.
Why not? In the SPL, yeah.
Sure.
Not?
So thank you for those reports. Thank you to everyone else who sent in reports. We will get to those on tomorrow's show.
Do you mind if I let people know about the Mark Warburton story and how he ended up sort of resigning? So Mark Warburton was the Rangers manager. Everybody loved him, right? All was going well. He thought he had a job offer from Nottingham Forest. So he went to the Rangers board and said, hey, can you let me out of my deal so I can go manage Forest, me and all my support staff? Rangers said, yes, we can do that. Then turns out the Forest job offer didn't quite materialise. They went back and said, can we stay? And Rangers said, no, you cannot. Carry on leaving. So that's how Rangers lost their coach.
I can't decide who I agree with here or who's making the better decision here. Because obviously, maybe you want to wait until that contract offer has been officially submitted.
Yes.
But by the same token, it is not as though Rangers are once the draw that they were, or are now the draw that they once were, that is to say.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like they're getting the cream of the crop applying for that managerial job.
They may do. I mean, they're back in the top flights. Like, things are settling in. Like, and obviously, you can take the job right now, and you're still 27 points behind. I'm not even joking. 27 points behind Celtic.
Yep.
So there's no pressure for the rest of the season. Then you can start again next season.
Name me a manager who wants the Rangers job, Daryl Grove.
Sam Allardyce.
There we go.
Actually, Bob Bradley.
Okay.
How about Bob Bradley for Rangers manager?
I have a feeling that Bob Bradley has his sights set on domestic opportunities.
Maybe LAFC is what you're saying.
I'm not saying anything. But yes, LAFC. That would be my guess where my money is, yeah.
All right. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Matt, Mark, Tyler and Richie for submitting the scouting reports. If you've recently sent us an Itchy Feet scouting request, I am on it. I will get you your scout this week.
I also just have to add here, because it took me a second to process what you just said. No time is of the essence, but I said it's not like high-profile managers are really wanting that Rangers job, and your answer was, I know we love him, the Swansea manager of 43 days, or 49 days, or whatever. I think that kind of proves my point.
Or the US manager that won a group at the World Cup.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. You can stick with that one if you want to.
All right, send your emails defending Bob Bradley to taylor@totalsoccershow.com. Let him have it. If you would like to join the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, you can go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe. If you would like to support the Total Soccer Show but don't want to commit financially, we know like not everybody has money to throw around. One thing you could do is support our sponsors. For example, you could download the SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab, enter the promo code TSS. Even if you don't buy a ticket, then you will still be supporting us by downloading the SeatGeek app and entering the promo code TSS. All right, Taylor, any final words before we sign off for today?
Nope.
Then thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you to Pav for stopping by earlier, and we will talk to you again on Thursday.